Black Diamond Broadcasting, Mike Grisdale. Opportunity to talk with Ken Kal, radio announcer for the Detroit Red Wings, part of our Red Wings coverage on the radio network here on our Sheboygan station, WCBY. Ken, thanks for taking some time. Going to be excited as we get this second half of the season underway. It's kind of been a nice turnaround, right?
Well, it certainly has been, Mike, and I think the guys needed a break. It was kind of a grueling schedule, but it's, a couple of guys like Larkin and Raymond, they're going to come right from the Four Nations tournament and get right back into the action against the Minnesota Wild. So they're not going to have a lot of rest. But with that said, I think the break came at a good time. Red Wings certainly set themselves up. They're in a good position right now. They've got the final wild card spot in the Eastern Conference, and now with 27 games left, I figure they need 14, 15 wins to solidify a playoff spot. So it's going to be a stretch run for sure for the Red Wings, and hopefully they can win some hockey games and make the playoffs this year.
Well, when you have a coaching change, sometimes it gives you a little jump start, but I think it goes beyond what Todd McClellan brings. It seems like the guys are jumping a little bit more now.
Well, I agree with you there, and first and foremost, I really liked Newsy Lalonde. I mean, Derek was a great coach, and he was really great to the media and was upfront and honest with all of us. And again, when the team's not performing the way they should be performing, somebody's got to go, and it's usually the coach, but wish him all the best. But with that said, Todd McClellan came in, and I knew Todd from way back when he was an assistant coach with the Red Wings back in 2008. And at that time, Mike, they were saying, man, this guy's going to be a good coach in the National Hockey League, and certainly he has. He has the experience. He's won over 700 games, 3 or 4 50-win seasons with teams from San Jose. So he certainly knows how to get the most from his guys, and he's a great teacher, and that's one thing that I've noticed first and foremost when he took over for Lalonde, is he came in and just started teaching, and the guys have really responded. So a couple of 7-game win streaks for the team, and right now they're in a good position, as I mentioned before.
And fans are seeing some of this young talent blossom quite quickly over the last year or so.
Well, you're right about that, and it seems like every guy that was called up from Grand Rapids has paid dividends for Detroit, and I'll start with, on the blue line. And, you look at the blue line core, this Albert Johansson, he's really stood out. I mean, he's been in the organization for 5 years right now, and, he's really taken off, especially under Todd McClellan. His minutes are improving, and he's been spectacular back there on the blue line. That's a good sign. Simon Edmondson, he's plus 11 on the season, and last year he came in towards the end of the year, and now this year he's solidified one of the positions back there on the blue line, and he's been terrific. Elmer Soderblom came in, and, I remember Todd McClellan when he first came in said, hey, I hope he can win a job on this team, and certainly he has. He's been playing on a third line sometimes, a fourth line, and he's a big body, forward, strong, power forward. He can get to the front of the net, has pretty good hands, too, for the size that he has, and he's been spectacular too. So all these guys that are coming up right now. Marco Kasper's another guy. The coaching staff was trying to find a player that could fit in on the top line with Raymond and Larkin, and they've tried different players, even Patrick Kane, but it seems like Marco Kasper has been a really good fit up there. So he's another young player that has really played well for Detroit. So all these guys coming up now are starting, they're developed, and now they're ready for the National Hockey League, and that's a good sign.
Steady goaltending, always a big factor, and the Wings have gotten that over the last month.
Well, they certainly have, and I think Cam Talbot, he had a little rough stretch. He started off good, went into a little bit of a lull, but certainly has come back. I think his record is like 10-2 in his last 12 starts. So he's been giving the Red Wings some really good goalkeeping. Alex Lyon's been really good too. So goaltending I don't think is the issue. I think the Red Wings just needed to open up a little more offensively, and certainly they've been doing that. Talking with Ken Kal,
Detroit Red Wings radio network. And Ken, if my math is right, what is it, almost 30 years you've been the Red Wings announcer?
Yeah, this is my 29th year, and next year will be 30, and that'll be the Red Wings' 100th season in the National Hockey League, so that's kind of a nice even number, I guess, if you look at the season next year. But, it's hard to believe. I mean, it just seemed like yesterday I was hired in and took over for Bruce Martin, and here I am 29 years later, and I'm really hoping that the Red Wings, before my career is over, they can make another run at the Stanley Cup championship.
Ken, how did you get your start in broadcasting?
Well, I started at Michigan as their hockey play-by-play guy back in 1984-85, and that was Red Berenson's first year as a head coach of Michigan, so I kind of grew with him. Spent 11 years at Michigan, and then when the Red Wing job opened, I didn't think I really had a chance, just having college radio play-by-play experience. But I think what really helped me back then was the Red Wings and college hockey were really tight, and they wanted somebody who kind of knew college hockey, and we had the Great Lakes Invitational. We had the Michigan State games over at Joe Louis Arena at the time, and we had an NCAA tournament. So I think they wanted somebody who had a college background, and I think I kind of checked the box off for that. But had a good interview and was lucky enough to get the position, and here I am 29 years later.
Well, the history of the Red Wings speaks for itself. I mean, called Hockey Town, the great legends and all the Stanley Cups. It's got to be exciting when you even travel on the road, isn't it?
Well, it really is, and the Red Wing fans travel well, too, everywhere we go around the National Hockey League, especially back in the day when the Red Wings were winning Stanley Cups. There were Red Wing jerseys all over the place. Didn't matter what city you went into. It seemed like, the Red Wing Army was there, and we're starting to get back to that now, and everywhere we go around the National Hockey League right now, it seems like there's more and more Red Wing jerseys. So the fans have been great here in Detroit. They've supported their team through thick and thin, and right now we're on an upswing, and hopefully within the next several years, the team's just going to get better and better, and we'll be right back where they were several years ago when they were winning Stanley Cups. Well,
your career centered around radio play-by-play. Have you had a chance to do a Red Wings game on television at all?
Well, I remember after my first year, the Red Wings were looking for a television announcer because Dave Strader left, and he went national, I think, with ESPN. And so I did a couple of preseason games on television, but I always liked radio. Even today, personally, I just like the challenge of being able to describe it. It's a different type of call than television because you have to describe who has the puck, where they're at on the ice all the time. And to me, it's really exciting, and it's a challenge to be able to paint the picture for the fans. And, hopefully for my broadcast, when people are listening, they can understand who has the puck, where they are on the ice, and bring that excitement to the radio and to the fans.
Well, we have a difference, of course, between TV and radio, but between sports. I understand one time you did a Tiger game. Is that true?
Yeah, I did. As a matter of fact, I did a handful of them, I think 8 or 9, and I filled in for Dan Dickerson on several occasions. And I remember my first game that I called, I never called baseball in my life. And I remember telling our program director at the station, I said, "You sure you want me to do this? Because I've never called a baseball game." But everything worked out fine. And that particular game, it was in 2013, the Tigers played the Royals. And Andy Dirks, who now does radio and television analyst for the Tigers, he had a 4-hit day. I remember that. I think he was a leadoff guy, and he had 4 hits. I think it was the only time in his career he had 4 hits. So every time I see him when I go down to the ballpark, I say, "Hey, Andy, I'm the guy that called out all those hits for you. Remember me?" So yeah, he had a good day that day. And over the course of the last, 15, 16 years, I called 7 or 8 Tiger games, and it's a whole different way of broadcasting. And then when you do it, you just realize how good Dan Dickerson is, and he is such a solid play-by-play guy. And you try to emulate him and try to be in the same ballpark as him, but he's heads and shoulders above me in calling baseball games. But yeah, it was a thrill to do. And being a Detroiter, growing up listening to Ernie Harwell on the radio, it was kind of nice to be able to sit in the chair for a couple of games.
We're talking with Ken Kal from the Detroit Red Wings radio network. We talk about some of the traditional things in the NHL. Some of those things have changed over the years. The All-Star Game has changed a lot. Now, this year, they introduced the Four Nations Face-Off. Some people might have been a little skeptic, but it seems like it's getting great reviews.
It certainly has been exciting, and I think this is something the players wanted. I'm not a big fan of All-Star games, and I think the only one that I really enjoy still is the baseball All-Star game because, there's something on the line there, and it seems like it's more challenging than any of the other sports. But I think personally, I've had enough of the skills competition, the 3-on-3, and players not going all out, and this gives the fans a lot of exciting hockey. And I think it really does well for the sport to get it some national notoriety. And I think that's what's happened over the last couple of weeks with this Four Nations tournament is people are starting to look at hockey now and saying, wow, what great games. And all of them were great games. And, that game, the first game between Canada and the United States was just unbelievable. I mean, you had 3 fights in the first 9 seconds, so much riding on the line. And if you're a United States fan, they won the hockey game in Canada. So, it's just been a terrific tournament, and I think all the players enjoy it as well.
Well, Ken, over your career, I know you've done games from many different venues and stadiums, even a few different ones in Detroit. How do you think Little Caesars matches up against some of the other places you broadcast from?
Mike, it's the best arena out of all the venues in the National Hockey League. It really is. And, again, I travel and I see them all. But they did a really, really good job putting this thing together at Little Caesars Arena. And it's just beautiful. The fans enjoy it. There's so much to do in the concourses. Even around the arena, there's different, restaurants and bars that people can attend before the game. The area's been building up each and every year. And, there's a lot of nice arenas out there, but I don't think there's any comparison. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Red Wings announcer and I work 41 games out of the year there. It just really is. I mean, it's clean. The sight lines are great. There's so much to do when you're inside the arena. It is the best arena, I think, in all of National Hockey League.
Well, as loyal Detroit fans, we've been up and down with our teams over the decades, and nothing gets more exciting than we have one of our teams make the playoffs. I think we've seen that recently with the Tigers last year, and we had, of course, the Lions' great run, and Pistons are playing well, and now the Red Wings can get in there. Hockey Town will really come alive, won't it?
Well, you're right about that, Mike, and I know fans here in Detroit have gone through some lean years in all the sports over the last decade, and now it's time for all the rebuilding to end, really, and now teams are good, they're developed, and as you mentioned, the Tigers were in the playoffs, the Lions had a great season, Pistons having a great year this year, and so are the Red Wings. So it just seems like, and let's not forget some of the college sports teams too. Michigan won a national championship in football a couple of years ago. Michigan State's basketball team is good, and so is Michigan. So the whole area, I think, right now is really growing, and I think the fans are going to see a lot of winning in all the professional sports and college sports over the next several years.
Ken, we appreciate the time and look forward to the rest of this exciting season for the Detroit Red Wings.
All right, Mike, always a pleasure, and let's talk again towards the end of the season. Let's cross our fingers and hope that the Red Wings will have some postseason play this year.
All right, for Ken Kal, I'm Mike Grisdale, Black Diamond Broadcasting.